Here is the truth most people discover too late. A narcissist does not stop disrespecting you because you finally found the perfect argument. They stop having power over you when they realize your emotional door is no longer open to their control. In this speech, you will learn the exact mindset and words that transform the entire dynamic, not by attacking them, not by trying to defeat them, but by showing that your self-respect is no longer negotiable. Have you ever noticed that the more you explain your feelings, the more they twist your words? The more you try to prove your value, the more they make you feel like you have something to prove. This is not because you lack communication skills. It is because some people are not listening to understand. They are listening for opportunities to regain control. Today, we are going to uncover why certain words have more power than arguments, why calm boundaries create a stronger impact than emotional reactions, and how you can stop participating in a cycle that slowly drains your confidence. A narcissistic person's disrespect is rarely about the person standing in front of them. It is often connected to their internal need to feel powerful, superior, or in control of the emotional environment around them. When they criticize, belittle, dismiss, or provoke someone, they may not be responding to reality. They may be protecting a fragile sense of self that feels threatened by accountability, vulnerability, or the possibility of being wrong. This understanding does not excuse harmful behavior. Recognizing the source of someone's actions does not mean accepting mistreatment. It simply allows you to stop carrying the unnecessary burden of believing their disrespect is proof that something is wrong with you. Many people become trapped trying to earn respect from someone who has already decided to view them through a distorted lens. They keep explaining, proving, apologizing, and changing themselves, hoping that one day the other person will finally recognize their value. But the shift begins when you understand that disrespect is often a test of access. A narcissistic person may continue pushing boundaries when they believe there will be no meaningful consequence. They observe what you tolerate, how quickly you forgive, and whether your words are supported by your actions. When you repeatedly accept disrespect while hoping for change, the pattern often becomes stronger. The moment you stop seeing their behavior as a measurement of your worth, you reclaim your emotional power. You begin responding instead of reacting. You stop asking, "How do I make them understand my value?" and start asking, how do I honor my own value regardless of whether they recognize it? That internal transformation is where real strength begins. The greatest power you have when dealing with a narcissistic person is not found in having the perfect comeback or winning every argument. It is found in your ability to remain connected to yourself when someone tries to pull you into emotional chaos. Many narcissistic patterns depend on provoking a reaction. They may use criticism, blame, guilt, silence, or accusations because strong emotional responses give them a sense of control over the interaction. When you respond with anger, desperation, or endless explanations, the focus shifts away from the disrespectful behavior and moves toward defending your reaction. Suddenly, you are no longer discussing what happened. You are trying to prove why you feel hurt. This creates a cycle where your energy is spent trying to convince someone who may not be interested in understanding you. A calm boundary creates a completely different dynamic. It communicates strength without needing aggression. It says that you can acknowledge another person's feelings while still protecting your own dignity. A grounded response does not come from wanting to punish someone. It comes from recognizing that your emotional well-being matters. The most effective boundaries are simple, clear, and consistent. They do not require long speeches or emotional battles. They communicate what behavior you will accept and what you will do if that behavior continues. The power is not only in the words themselves, but in the calm confidence behind them. When a person realizes they can no longer pull you into confusion, guilt, or fear, the dynamic begins to change. Your peace becomes something they cannot easily manipulate. The goal is not to control the narcissist's actions. The goal is to become so anchored in self-respect that their attempts to disturb your balance no longer have the same influence over you. The most powerful words you can say to a narcissistic person are not the ones designed to hurt them, expose them, or make them feel defeated. The words that create the greatest shift are the ones that come from self-respect and emotional clarity. A narcissistic person often expects conflict, emotional reactions, or long explanations because these responses create opportunities for them to redirect the conversation and regain control. But a calm statement rooted in boundaries changes the entire interaction. A powerful boundary sounds simple because it does not depend on convincing the other person. It is not an attempt to make them admit they were wrong or force them to suddenly understand your feelings. It is a declaration of what you will and will not participate in. Words like, I will not continue this conversation if I am being disrespected, or I am willing to talk when we can communicate with respect. Shift the focus from their need for control to your commitment to protect your emotional space. The strength of these words comes from the energy behind them. If they are spoken with fear, they become another request for approval. If they are spoken with calm confidence, they become a reflection of inner stability. The narcissistic person may challenge the boundary, test it, or attempt to provoke you into abandoning it. This is why consistency matters more than a single powerful statement. The purpose of these words is not to force a narcissist to change. You cannot control another person's awareness, accountability, or willingness to grow. The purpose is to make your position clear and to remind yourself that your dignity does not depend on someone else's permission. When your words and actions align, disrespect loses its ability to control your emotional world. Many people believe that the more they explain themselves, the more likely a narcissistic person will finally understand their feelings. They repeat their reasons, provide more details, defend their intentions, and try to prove that they are being treated unfairly. But in unhealthy dynamics, excessive explanation often creates more opportunities for manipulation rather than creating understanding. The problem is not always that your message is unclear. Sometimes the other person is simply unwilling to receive it. A narcissistic person may take your explanations and turn them into new points of conflict. They may focus on small details, question your memory, challenge your emotions, or shift the conversation toward defending themselves. Instead of addressing the original disrespect, the discussion becomes a debate where you feel pressured to prove your reality. This can leave you feeling exhausted and unheard. Protecting your power means understanding that you do not need to present a courtroom case for your feelings to be valid. Your emotions and boundaries do not require another person's approval before they matter. A simple statement delivered with confidence often carries more strength than a long explanation filled with frustration. When you stop over-explaining, you create space for clarity. You communicate that your boundaries are decisions, not negotiations. You are no longer asking someone to understand your worth. You are demonstrating that you understand it yourself. This does not mean becoming cold or refusing communication. It means recognizing when communication has turned into a cycle where you are constantly trying to prove yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. Real strength comes when you can express yourself clearly and then step back. Your peace is not protected by making everyone agree with you. It is protected by knowing when your truth has already been spoken. Before we continue, take a moment and ask yourself, how many times have you ignored your own feelings just to keep peace with someone else? If this message speaks to your experience, share it with someone who needs this reminder. Sometimes one sentence, one boundary, and one moment of self-respect can begin a completely different chapter of your life. Understanding a narcissistic person's pain can create compassion, but compassion becomes harmful when it requires you to accept repeated disrespect. Many empathetic people fall into the trap of believing that if they understand someone's wounds deeply enough, they can love that person into changing. They see the insecurity behind the arrogance, the fear behind the anger, and the hurt behind the controlling behavior. While this awareness can create understanding, it should never become a reason to abandon your own emotional safety. Every person carries struggles, fears, and past experiences that influence their behavior. However, those experiences do not remove personal responsibility. A person's pain may explain why they act a certain way, but it does not give them permission to hurt others. True compassion includes recognizing the humanity of another person, while also recognizing the importance of protecting yourself. A narcissistic pattern often creates confusion because moments of kindness may exist alongside moments of criticism, manipulation, or emotional neglect. This can make you focus on their good side while minimizing the damage caused by their harmful actions. You may start making excuses for them, believing that patience and understanding will eventually lead to respect. But a healthy relationship requires both compassion and accountability. The moment you realize that empathy does not mean tolerating everything, your perspective begins to change. You can care about someone's struggles without allowing those struggles to become your burden. You can wish someone healing while still creating distance from behaviors that harm you. Respect is not created by endlessly understanding someone who refuses to understand you. It is created when both people recognize each other's humanity, boundaries, and emotional needs. Compassion should open your heart, but self-respect must protect your life. When you balance both, you stop confusing love with self-sacrifice and begin choosing relationships that honor your worth. Emotional detachment is one of the most important shifts when dealing with a narcissistic person because it removes the power that comes from controlling your reactions. Many narcissistic patterns are strengthened by emotional responses. When they can make you feel angry, guilty, anxious, or desperate to prove yourself, they gain influence over your emotional state. The more energy you spend trying to change their opinion of you, the more connected you become to their approval. Emotional detachment does not mean becoming heartless, uncaring, or completely disconnected from your feelings. It means learning to observe what is happening without allowing every comment, accusation, or reaction to define your inner peace. You begin to recognize that someone else's words are not always a reflection of reality. Sometimes they are simply expressions of that person's own fears, defenses, or need for control. When you practice detachment, you stop entering every argument as if your identity is on trial. You no longer feel forced to defend every misunderstanding or respond to every attempt to provoke you. Instead, you pause and choose your response from a place of calm awareness. This creates a powerful change because manipulation becomes less effective when there is no emotional chaos to control. A narcissistic person may notice when the old patterns no longer work. They may increase their attempts to get a reaction, but your consistency teaches an important lesson. Your emotional stability is not available for someone else to use as a source of power. The goal is not to become distant from love or connection. The goal is to become connected to yourself first. When you no longer depend on another person's approval to feel valuable, their disrespect loses its ability to control your confidence, your decisions, and your sense of peace. Changing the way you respond to disrespect begins with healing the relationship you have with yourself. Many people who tolerate narcissistic behavior are not weak. They may have learned throughout life to prioritize keeping peace, avoiding conflict, or seeking approval from others. Over time, this can create a pattern where they ignore their own needs and accept treatment that slowly damages their confidence. The first step toward change is recognizing that your feelings, boundaries, and emotional needs deserve the same care you often give to others. A narcissistic person may take advantage of the moments when you doubt yourself. If you constantly question whether you are being too sensitive, too demanding, or unreasonable, you become easier to control. Healing requires rebuilding trust in your own perception. It means listening to the signals within you that say something feels wrong instead of immediately dismissing those feelings to protect someone else's comfort. This inner work involves understanding your own patterns. Sometimes people remain connected to disrespectful situations because they are trying to receive the validation they never received before. They keep hoping that if they become more patient, more understanding, or more perfect, they will finally be treated with love and respect. But your worth is not something another person can give or take away. When you strengthen your self-respect, your standards naturally change. You begin noticing behaviors you once ignored. You become more comfortable saying no, expressing your needs, and walking away from conversations that harm your emotional well-being. The greatest transformation happens when you stop asking someone else to recognize your value and start living as if your value has always been there. The moment you choose yourself without guilt, disrespect loses its place in your life because your own acceptance becomes stronger than anyone else's rejection. The final shift in dealing with a narcissistic person happens when you stop making their respect the measure of your worth. Many people spend years trying to convince someone to see their value. They search for the right words, the perfect behavior, or the moment when the other person will finally understand what they have lost. But true freedom begins when you realize that your dignity was never dependent on someone else's ability to recognize it. A narcissistic person may give approval one day and remove it the next. They may offer praise when they feel in control and criticism when they feel challenged. If your sense of worth depends on their reactions, your emotional state will always be connected to their behavior. The moment you stop seeking their validation, you reclaim the part of yourself that was given away while trying to earn acceptance. Honoring yourself means making choices based on your values, not based on fear of rejection or the desire to avoid conflict. It means understanding that love does not require you to tolerate humiliation, and compassion does not require you to abandon your own needs. You can care about someone while still recognizing that certain behaviors are unacceptable. This transformation is not about defeating or changing the narcissistic person. It is about changing your own position in the relationship. You no longer approach every interaction hoping they will finally choose you. Instead, you choose yourself by maintaining your boundaries, protecting your peace, and refusing to participate in patterns that diminish your confidence. The strongest message you can send is not always spoken through words. It is shown through your actions, your consistency, and your willingness to walk away from anything that repeatedly asks you to sacrifice your self-respect. When you truly honor yourself, disrespect no longer feels like a challenge to overcome. It becomes a sign that guides you toward protecting your own peace. The greatest lesson in dealing with a narcissistic person is understanding that your power was never found in changing them. It was always found in reconnecting with yourself. You do not need to win every argument, prove your innocence, or convince someone to finally see your value. Your worth existed before their approval, and it remains untouched by their criticism, rejection, or disrespect. The words you speak to a narcissist become powerful when they come from a place of self-respect rather than anger. A boundary is not a weapon used to punish someone. It is a promise you make to yourself that you will no longer participate in patterns that destroy your peace. When you communicate calmly, stop over-explaining, and refuse to be pulled into emotional chaos, you send a message that your dignity is no longer available for someone else's control. Remember, the goal is not to force a narcissistic person to become the person you hoped they would be. The goal is to become the person who no longer abandons themselves in order to receive love, acceptance, or respect. Healing begins when you stop asking, how can I make them treat me better, and start asking, how can I treat myself with the respect I deserve? Because the moment you choose yourself, the dynamic changes. The moment you protect your boundaries, their ability to control your emotions begins to disappear. And the moment you realize your peace is more valuable than their approval, you discover the greatest freedom of all, the power to walk forward without needing anyone else's permission to know your own worth.